How many like fixing things? Anybody like fixing things? Walter, you like fixing things? What kind of stuff do you like to fix?
My car.
Your car?
The siding of the car.
The siding of the car.
No, the siding of our garage. The vinyl's coming out.
Okay. So you're, all right.
I'm just waiting for Joe to help.
You're waiting for Joe to help you? You're going to supply the lemonade and Joe's going to supply some of the other help? All right. Ian?
I'd like to fix the next election.
All right. Wayne, you like fixing stuff?
Yeah, anything that sometimes it ends up in the trash, but again, I like to give it a shot.
Yeah. I like to fix things too. Plumbing, not so much, but if it needs to be done, I will fix it. But I kind of like fixing things that are mechanical, and trying to figure out how things work and how they're designed. When years and years ago, like a long time ago, yeah, before I was married, I think even. It wasn't before I was married, just after I got married, doesn't matter. My sister had a boyfriend, and they had this game thing, and it was all in pieces. She hands me this bag of all these pieces and says, "Can you fix this?" And what's it supposed to do? She says, "I don't know." But I told them that you could fix it. Put the pressure on, all right? I don't know what it is. I don't know what I've just got all these parts. And it was these gun things that shot things, but they were all in a million pieces. And it looks like there's two of them, so we'll divide them into pieces, parts, and then see how these things fit together. But it was a bit of a challenge, all right? But trying to figure out why things are the way they are. That why did God design things the way that he designed them? Have you ever thought that? Why did God design the world the way he designed the world? Deborah?
To sustain human life.
To sustain human life. All right. Any other thoughts? Why did God design things the way he designed them? Martina? Pardon me? For his pleasure. The evolutionists will tell you that, we came from a monkey because you can see that they've both got two eyes and two ears and so forth. And I say that there is similarities in the way things are because there's a common designer. Okay? Now there's other things that are vastly different, but there's a lot of similarities between a lot of things that God has created because it's a common designer. All right? Makes sense. Dan?
Because you can't prove it with science. Like the other day, I was sitting out at the fire and just looking in the area, and it's like he created the trees to give people oxygen through the carbon dioxide first, the trees.
Yeah.
So the scientists can't. It just doesn't make any sense.
It doesn't make any sense. It's called symbiotic relationships. I did an object lesson just years ago about a symbiotic relationship, and there's between a crocodile and I can't remember the name, but it's a little bird. And you know what this little bird does? The little bird hops around in the crocodile's mouth and takes the bloodsuckers off of its gums. And the crocodile, here's this massive crocodile and this little itty-bitty bird. If the croc wants to eat a bird, here's a good opportunity, all right? But he doesn't, and they work together. And there's so much of God's creation that also works together, and it's called a symbiotic relationship. But after I've done a lot of digging into this book of Revelation as we've been studying it, and after really looking at, especially at these two chapters, chapter 4 and chapter 5. We're going to look at chapter 5 today. We looked at chapter 4 last week. But I have a very different view of creation. Or it's much clearer, I think, now than it was before. And we ask the question, and I've asked this before, why did God make so much variety? They say there's 20,000 different species of bees. I know there's 5,000 or 6,000 different varieties of grass. All right? And the answer that I could come up with before, more or less, was, well, he can. so he did. But that's a puny answer. It really is such a puny, too simple of an answer as to why he did that, all right? We know that God took everything after he created it, and he put everything under the dominion of what? Man. Take your Bibles, come with me to Genesis chapter 1, verse 26. Genesis 1, verse 26. And God said, here's the first evidence of the Trinity, right there in chapter 1. And God said, let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, and over the fowl of the air, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth. We're going to put man is going to be in dominion over these things. Now we know that while they were in the garden, all right, were they in danger of a lion biting them or anything like that? No. All right? They weren't. All right? But, so is all of creation for man to enjoy? Is creation for man to enjoy? Talk to me. It was? Is creation for man to enjoy?
Yes.
Yeah? Is that all creation is for? No. That's part of it. That's part of it. We are doing, you give us all things to enjoy. But that's not the purpose of it. Okay? Yes, that is kind of a fringe benefit of it, but it's not the purpose of what God created is not for us. We have a tendency to think that everything around is all about us. Everything is all around here. It's all about God. Okay? And we're going to see that as we look. I think it's the perspective that we have. It's because this is what we can see. This is what we can touch. And one of the biggest problems, I think, is that we believe that everything pertains to us when it should be us pertaining to God. Okay? Chapter 4 starts to clarify with us, as we looked last week, at the purpose of creation. But chapter 5 shows us man's total inability to break free from the consequences of our guilt. Okay? Take a look, if you will. Let's start in Revelation chapter 5. It's a second to come from Genesis all the way to Revelation. Revelation chapter 5, we look at verse 1. Let's read the first 3 verses. It says, and I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne. Remember, let me just back up for a second here. Remember that John had been taken up to heaven and shown this. And it was a vision of what was to come. All right? Let's kind of keep in mind that what he was seeing was, I'm going to show you things that will be hereafter. Okay? And so John is there, and he says, and I saw, that's who John is, okay? And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne. Who's sitting on the throne? God. This is not Jesus. God, Jesus is God. Let me clarify that there. But this is not God the Son sitting on the throne. This is God the Father on the throne here, okay? And I saw in the right hand of him that sat on the throne a book written within and on the backside sealed with 7 seals. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof? And no man in heaven, nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. First of all, I want you to see something here. It says that he saw a book that was written, and it was written within and on the backside. All right? And there's seals on that. But understand this, that what is written, he says this, I'm going to show you things that are going to come hereafter. All right? And this book, when it's written on both sides, what's that telling you? Any thought? This is a simple thought here. It's written on both sides. It's all there. There isn't anything new that's going to be added to this. It's written. The book is full. All right? And the book is sealed. These are things that are going to happen. All right? And what is there, it is fixed, it's complete. And we have here these 7 seals that are on here. All right? And these seals, as the seals are open, that there's the 7 seals, and the 7th seal introduces the 7 trumpets, and the 7th trumpet introduces the 7 vial or the bowl judgments, and then this brings on the full wrath of God. And we'll get into that as we progress through, and it'll take a little while before we get there, but we'll look at all those different things. We're not going to look at those today, all right? But we see here in verse number 2, they wanted to open this up to see what was there. And I saw a strong angel proclaiming with a loud voice, "Who is worthy to open the book and to loose the seals thereof?" The right to open this book is not a legal right. It is a right of who is worthy. It's a right of righteousness, all right? And he looked and he saw verse number 3 here, that this right for man, okay, and there's no man in heaven nor in earth, neither under the earth, was able to open the book, neither to look thereon. Man's total inability to have anything to do with this. You need to understand that, okay? There isn't anybody. The only one that is righteous enough, the only one that is worthy enough to do that is Jesus Christ, who we're going to see as the passage progresses along, all right? And just need to understand this one thing here. It's man's total inability. Look at verse 4. It says, "And I wept much because no man was found worthy to open and to read the book, neither to look thereon." Man's total inability is there. Now we understand that as we go on here, the very first step that needs to take place here is to recognize him, as we see in chapter 4, to recognize who Jesus is as our creator. As to everything that exists, you have to recognize first that he is the creator here. Look at verse 5. It says, "And one of the elders saith unto me, Weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the Root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof." And remember, as we look at this, okay, I want you to understand something. We looked in chapter 4 as God the Creator, okay? Let's take our Bibles, if you will, please. Let's come over to Acts chapter 14, okay? Acts chapter 14. This is Paul and Barnabas. And you remember when Paul and Barnabas were preaching at Lystra, people came there and they wanted to make them, they thought they were gods, all right? In verse number 12 it says, "And they called Barnabas Jupiter and Paul Mercurius, because he was the chief speaker." And do you remember what Paul and Barnabas did when they were called gods? They rent their clothes. They went to the store and said, "I'll take those, and I'll rent these ones." And no, they ripped them, okay? And it humbled them, and then they took them through. And look at verse 14, all right? And it says, "Which when the apostles Barnabas and Paul heard of, they rent their clothes and ran in among the people, crying out and saying, Sirs, why do ye these things? We also are men of like passions with you, and preach unto you that ye should turn from these vanities unto the living God, which made heaven and earth and the sea and all things that are therein, who in times past suffered all nations to walk in their own ways. Nevertheless, he left not himself without witness, in that he did good and gave us rain from heaven and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness. And with these sayings scarce restrained they the people, but they had not done sacrifice unto them." We see here that the very first thing they wanted them to see is, look, you have to recognize who God is. He is the creator of everything. Nothing would be here without that. And the same we see that in Revelation. It begins with recognizing that God is the creator, okay? The second step, back there still back to Revelation chapter 5. The second step is to recognize Jesus as our Redeemer. Listen, "And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne and of the 4 beasts, and in the midst of the elders, stood a lamb as it had been slain, having 7 horns and 7 eyes, which are the 7 spirits of God sent forth unto all the earth." And we see it also, as we look there in Acts chapter 14, that again, Paul and Barnabas were doing the same thing with these people. You need to recognize first that God is the creator, and then recognize that Jesus is our Redeemer, okay? Why is the book of Ruth in our Bible? Why is the book of Ruth in our Bible? Is it so we have a little Hallmark break in the middle of all of this judgment? Why is it there? Deborah.
Part of it is the lineage of Christ.
Part of it is the lineage of Christ, yes.
Part is that she was a Moabite. So
There's another part, okay? Again, we can't oversimplify. By me saying that, the reason God made 20,000 different variations of bees is just because he can. It's oversimplifying God, okay? The same with when we're looking at something like this. We can't just say, well, this is the only reason why God did this. But there's a couple of big reasons. It shows the lineage of Jesus. It shows that even in the lineage of Jesus, it is so cool. This isn't a pure bloodline that we might think, if you're going to sell a thoroughbred horse or, precious dog or something like that, we're going to throw in there? We're going to throw in a Moabite in the middle of this mess. And that's okay. God said that's okay. We're going to put a Moabite in there. That Moabite was no longer an idolater, okay? That Moabite turned to him, all right? But she was just a Moabite. What's another reason why we have the book of Ruth here? Sharon?
It shows the need for a redeemer.
It shows us the need for a redeemer. It gives us the exact process that was there as far as God had laid down for having a kinsman redeemer. You remember that Boaz was a relation to her, and there was a closer one, but he was willing to step in. That shows what the redeemer not only has to be legally in that position, but also has to be willing to do that. And it gives us, I'm sorry, Deborah, you flashed a hand there? And so it shows us that Jesus is not only the one that can do it, but Jesus was the one who was willing to do that. And I tried to explain that in the Easter message, in that when we had the group of singing and all that, and the fact that Jesus chose, and at any point in time, he could have stopped it. He said, don't you think I can call 12 legions of angels right now? And I could stop this at any time. At any time, he could have stepped off that cross. At any time these people were beating him over the head and they were mocking him and everything else, he could have just... Remember, this just astounds me. Remember when he was in the Garden of Gethsemane and they said, he says, who are you looking for? And they said, we're looking for Jesus of Nazareth. And he says, that's me, and they go, whoosh, and they fell down. Like there's just a tip of the iceberg of his power. It's me, and everybody falls down. I picture those movies, where the atom bomb goes off and the power just goes, and it just wipes everything out. And they stood back up, still going to take him on. And Jesus says, all right, you can have me. But here's just a teeny bit of my power. I am he. That's it. That's all he had to say. And everybody falls down. Army fell down. It wasn't just priests, okay? There were soldiers and everything else that was there. But this kinsman redeemer had to be willing. The first redeemer in the book of Ruth, remember? He says, well, if I do this, what's it going to do to me? Remember what it's going to do? It will mar my inheritance. He could do it, but it was going to cost him something, and he wasn't willing to do it, so he said, here's my shoe. All right. Well, I want with a stinky thing. But it was evidence of what he'd done. All right. And the Redeemer has to be willing. And that's the same with Jesus. He was willing. And that is another one of the reasons, and I'm sure there's more that we haven't even looked at as to why the book of Ruth is there. Those are just a couple it's 4 chapters. And we've just hit 3 major doctrines of reasons why it was there, but it's God. Okay? But those are some of the reasons why that is there, all right? Because Jesus is our Redeemer, we are able to continue on through this chapter 5, all right, and see what God has for us there, all right? Backing up to verse 5 again. It calls us there and it says, and one of the elders saith unto him, weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. That references us back to, if you will, come with me to Genesis chapter 49. Genesis chapter 49. starting in verse number 8. You remember, this is when Jacob is on his deathbed, and he is literally, because he puts his feet up and he dies right after this, but he gives a blessing to each one of his kids. Well, some of them aren't really a blessing, but Reuben really isn't a blessing. But at any rate, he goes on and he tells them, and it's prophecy, all right? In verse number 8, it says, "In Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise." Remember, Judah is the fourth one in line here. Reuben, Levi, Simeon, Judah, okay? He's not the firstborn. Reuben was. He's not the second, third. He's the fourth, all right? But here he comes. "Judah, thou art he whom thy brethren shall praise. Thy hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stoopeth down. He coucheth as a lion, and as an old lion. Who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be." Note here that this is where you get the lion of the tribe of Judah. It talks about him being a lion, but it also talks about giving him the scepter. He is the kingly line. God allowed them to have Saul as the king, but he was not where Christ was ever going to come from. It was the kingly line. He let them have Saul as their king as a punishment to them. Although Saul had the right attitude at the beginning, God knew what he was going to do. And it was a punishment to them before David actually came. David was the line. It was already prophesied here. And it talks here, again in Revelation chapter 5, it calls him the Lion of the tribe of Judah. All right? Look at the next title that it gives to him. The Root of David. You know what that means? David came from him. You know, and there's that discussion about well, Jesus is frequently called the Son of David. But in essence, David came from him to begin with. So it's kind of a flipping thing back and forth here. But he is the root of David. That's where he came. He's not, David isn't his root. He is David's root, all right? And we see that it's talking about Jesus, giving him these two particular titles. And we saw in chapter 1 all the other different titles in reference to who he is, okay, and characteristics of him. And it says, "And one of the elders saith unto him, Weep not, behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, hath prevailed to open the book and to loose the 7 seals thereof." He's the only one that can do that. And it says in verse 6, "And I beheld, and lo, in the midst of the throne of the 4 beasts," which we know represent all of creation, all right, "and in the midst of the elders stood a lamb as it had been slain." Note where Jesus is. He's in the middle. He is the focal point of all of heaven. You know, people talk about things, you know, when we're going to get to see loved ones, and we are going to get to see loved ones in heaven. But you know what the focal point of heaven is? It's not going to see my mom and my dad. It's not going to see a brother or sister or even a child that I may have lost. The focal point is Jesus Christ. That's the focal point, all right? And it's interesting when we see John saw Jesus as a lamb, all right? When man puts something in there to make them show how powerful they are, what animal does Russia take? The bear. What animal does Britain take? The lion. What animal does France take? What's that? I'm sorry? Not the phoenix. France takes the tiger. Okay? What animal does the U.S. take? The eagle. The spread eagle. All right? All of these are ravenous. Okay? They're all ravenous. What does the ultimate power take? A lamb. See the difference between what God does and what everybody else does? They all want something ferocious, and he says, it's a lamb. Jesus is a lamb. It's interesting, we look at this lamb, all right? There is, I've heard me tell you this a whole bunch of times, that I'm not real big into numerology. And it's for this cause, okay? There are numbers that do mean some things, and they are significant, All right, and I'm going to show you some significance here. I just think some people want to take it too far, you know? Like every book with chapter 3 and verse 16, you know, means this. And I'm thinking, the chapter and verse breaks weren't ever inspired, okay? So trying to put those numbers in there, although it might be a neat little you know, might kind of work in something, but it's not the right thing. But the numbers do mean something, okay? The number of 7 is a number of perfection, all right? We can see that all through. But we see here, when it's talking about this Lamb, again, it's a vision, all right? And it's representation. Again, remember we talked about when he saw the vision of God, the Father on the throne, and what it was there. We're not seeing actual physical characteristics as such. It was as the way the light hit there and so forth. And we see in chapter 4, it talks about his right hand, okay? But up until then, it was the way the light went through and so forth here. But anyway, this Lamb having been slain, second half of verse 6, having 7 horns, okay? 7 being the number of perfection, and horns means power, okay? And when it talks about that, it always talks about the horns, that it's a symbol of power. Jesus has perfect power, all right? It has 7 eyes, which is representative of wisdom and being able to see everywhere, okay? Talks about 7 horns, 7 eyes, and when the 7 spirits, talking about the presence of it, the perfect presence. And if you put these together, we have omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresent. Again, God's characteristics of who he is. All-powerful, all-knowing, everywhere. Knows what's going on everywhere, okay? And like I said, the Lamb itself is the center of all that happens in heaven. And all creation centers on him, like those 4 creatures that are around the throne. The elders are talking about God's people, and I give you some thoughts onto what people, who these elders are last week, and I'm going to give you one other little thing here to show you why I think, and again, it's just my theory as to who these 24 people are. I don't believe that they are angels, all right, and I explained that a little bit last week, but all of we have that. Again, Jesus is in the middle here. The 4 beasts are around the throne. The 24 elders are there, and the angels encircle the throne, all right? And Jesus is the focal point, the center of that. Look at verse 7. It says, and he came and took the book out of the right hand of him that sat upon the throne. Now, what it's saying there, and he came. This isn't just a creature here. This is not what it's talking about. It's talking about who Jesus is, all right? He came and took the book out of the right hand of him that sat upon the throne. And when he had taken the book, the 4 beasts and the 24 elders fell down before the Lamb, having every one of them harps and golden vials full of odors, which are the prayers of the saints. And they sung a new song, saying, thou art worthy to take the book and to open the seals thereof, for thou wast slain and hast redeemed us to God by thy blood out of every kindred and tongue and people and nation. Who did Jesus redeem? Everyone. People. Did he redeem the angels? No. He redeemed us, people. That's why when these 24 elders are saying this, I don't think they can be angels, all right? They weren't redeemed. But they're saying here that we have been redeemed, okay? And they're all in there singing this song, okay? But again, I don't want to get into who these 24 elders are. Personally, I think, just for fun, you can disagree with me, because I don't have any other basis for this other than just a couple little hints in here. But I think they're 24 people that maybe some of them still haven't even existed yet. Well, I think they probably have, because I don't think we've got much time left. But these are, I believe they're 24 great saints of God, like Enoch, Elijah.
You don't think you're Jehovah's Witnesses?
No, I don't believe that. Or the 144,000 either, mind you, but that's what I think they are, but I don't know. Honestly, I don't know who they are. But that's, you can toss it around if you want, but there's just not enough scripture to really nail it down and say this is who these guys are. But, you know, the elders are redeemed, the angels are not, okay? But moving on through here, I want to show you one other thing, and maybe this is a bit of a coincidence, maybe it's not. And I beheld and I heard the voice of many angels round about the throne, and the beasts and the elders. And the number of them was 10,000 times 10,000 and thousands of thousands. Don't try to multiply it out and say this is how many angels there are. Okay? What he's saying here is there's so many we can't count them. All right? That's how many angels there are. You can't count them. There's our number. There's just Googles of these things. You want to call that a word. All right? Saying with a loud voice, worthy is the Lamb that was slain to receive. This is kind of unique, and again, maybe I'm stretching things. Receive power, riches, and wisdom, and strength, and honor, and glory, and blessing. 7 things. Again, it's complete and it's perfect. Am I looking too much into numbers here? Maybe, but I just want you to point that little thing out there. All right? And every creature which is in heaven and on the earth and under the earth, and such as are in the sea, and all that are in them, heard I saying, blessing and honor and glory and power be unto him that sitteth upon the throne and unto the Lamb forever and ever. And every creature which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and such as are in the sea. Is that people? No. We don't live under the sea. All right? And under the earth. They're there. This is God's creation. It's God's creation that will praise him. All right? Why are there? They're discovering now that they can make some cameras and so forth to withstand the great pressures of water. You know, we can fly to the moon, but they can't get anybody to the bottom of the ocean, which is only a couple of miles away, but they can't do it. And they're finally able to make some equipment that can get down there and see creatures we'd never seen before. Strange creatures. Strange fish that live down there. Why are they there? God put them there. You know why they're there? They're there to praise God. That's why they're there. You really can't say they're for us, because 6,000 years later we're just finding them now. All right? And they can't swim up. They'll explode or collapse or something on the way up because they have to stay down there. They're there for him. Creation is for God. It's all centered around him. We need to be centered around him, not the other way around. It's not the perspective we need to look at is we need to understand all of these creatures here, they bow down and say, worthy is he to be praised, and they're all focused on Jesus. They're all focused on God. That's where our focus needs to be. We're still creatures. Remember when I asked at the beginning why everything's all here? Let's back up a little bit here. Let's go to chapter 4, last verse of verse 4. Or chapter 4, rather. The last verse. Thou art worthy, O Lord, to receive glory and honor and power, for thou hast created all things, and for thy pleasure they are and were created. Yes, nature should help us appreciate him more. It should cause us to worship him more. It should help to humble us to where we can understand how puny we are in his vastness. It really ought to. It really ought to. You know, like I said about the ocean, what is down there just 3 miles away? 3 miles away. What's down there? In Luke chapter 19 and verse 40, he says, and he answered and said unto them, I tell you that if these should hold their peace, the stones would immediately cry out. Do you think he's being literal or figurative there? I think he's being literal. It tells us there in Revelation, these goofball-looking creatures down 3-4 miles under the water are going to praise God. It's a fish. They can't be that important. God says He didn't die for them. He didn't redeem them. But you know what? They're going to praise Him. They're going to praise Him. The very last the very last verse of Psalms, Psalm 150 verse 6 says, "Let everything that hath breath praise the Lord. Praise ye the Lord. Let everything that hath breath." Verse 13, as we read there in Revelation chapter 5, says, "And every creature which is in heaven and on earth and under the earth, such as is in the sea, and all that are in them sang, and they praised Him." What are we doing? Where is our perspective? Why is it that I can focus better on God when I'm surrounded by His creation than I can when I'm in a room with four walls? Think of that. When you get out in His creation and just be quiet, shut your phone off, and look at where God is, to me, at least, I get closer with there. It's like I'm not distracted there like I am if I'm just in four walls. This is interesting too. Why are there so very many references to God's creation in Job chapters 31 to 41 when it's God talking? And you know what He's doing? He's whittling Job down to size. And you know how He does that? He says, "What do you know about my creation in the frost? What do you know about my creation in where the waves come and the snow and this animal and this and this? What do you know about where were you when I laid the foundations for this?" You know what it's about? His creation. His creation. And Job got whittled down to size. Poor Job, most righteous man on the planet at the time, still didn't grasp how vast God was compared to him. And God said, "Well, look at my servant Job. He's more righteous than anyone else." But he still didn't grasp it. How should we grasp it? Where are we? What are we doing? You know, we need to realize who He is and what He is. And it ought to humble us. This stuff just didn't happen, and we can say that, well, we know it just didn't happen, you know, but I think a lot of times we just say stuff and it just kind of rolls off and we're not really paying attention. But how great is our God? And how greatly to be praised. That's a song, but it's also Bible. I can't remember the rest of it. I didn't plan on that part, but just think of that. Think of how great our God is and how much we need to please Him. That's okay. It's all in innocence. Whew, there we go. Let's have a word of prayer. Precious Father,